Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, this is a channel about Dungeons and Dragons. This week we're doing things a little bit differently. I just want to talk to you about character creation and talk to you about how I created my character, the Hangman, for my live stream game that I'm part of in Critical Failures. So, with that out of the way, let's jump right into it. Alright, so first off, full disclaimer, for those of you who watch the videos and are often concerned about my mental health. I appreciate you guys caring. I really do. It's really nice to know that people really are concerned and wondering if I'm okay or not. But this video is not going to make you believe otherwise. So I am so sorry about that. But I just wholeheartedly, I appreciate that you guys are concerned and worried about if I'm in trouble emotionally, mentally, and things like that. I'm not. I appreciate it though, and I guess I can kind of see where you're coming from. But please, if you do see someone, please keep reaching out, because you never know when someone actually really needs that help, and that's really, really important to me to help someone out, that especially if they're suffering in that kind of a real severe circumstance. Now, again, I'm not. But as you watch this video, it might be that way. It might appear that way. And I appreciate it. So full disclosure, not going to help me defend the fact that I'm mentally okay. So the Hangman is a reborn rogue, or really an undead rogue. So this character is someone I've actually thought about for a really, really long time. Long before I even came up with a class for them to be, I came up with just an idea. And when I create characters, I'm always listening to music because that's just, it helps me creatively. I always appreciate it when I can listen to a song and stop thinking about my life and start thinking about something just beyond, something imaginary, something like exciting, something beautiful, and have that song take me to that place. And that's really something I enjoy. I find it beautiful. It's one of my favorite things about music. Now, here, when I started creating the groundwork for who the Hangman was, I was listening to Nymphetamine by Cradle of Filth. If you don't know Cradle of Filth, they are awesome, but if you don't like really, really, really heavy like black metal, like, it's not going to be your thing. But I listened to this song, and it's a love song. It's very strange for the layperson to kind of see that connection, but it always felt to me like there was so much loss in this song. And I thought about, in a fantasy setting, in a circumstance where things would be, magical and mystical, what would be like the worst kind of loss that you could see? And I thought of it being, what if it was a loss that you couldn't escape from? What if it was a loss that was created out of love, but ultimately it was a mistake? So in the last episode of Descent into Avernus, we had an opportunity to talk amongst our characters, and it came up about me being undead and being in the city of Baldur's Gate, and that being really, really bad. So I had to explain what I knew about my character. Now, the Hangman, the way he became the Hangman, or he assumed that name, was he became conscious as he was in a body that was hanging from a tree. It's gruesome, it's horrific, I get it. But it's supposed to be that way. So the only thing that he has that's really his is this cloth that he uses to cover his face and his neck. And that cloth is really symbolic of part of his backstory. Understand that that's all he had. He had no real understanding of how he got there, how long he's been there, but he's been there long enough for the rope to begin to rot and fall apart, and for him to fall down to the ground. That's how he ended up getting free. So it takes a significant amount of time and the right kind of circumstances to happen, and isolation for people to not just take you down. So before that moment, and I thought that moment was great, because if you were going to start from nothing and have guilt, a great way to show that was to be punished for a crime that you can't even remember. And I think that's really indicative to the character. I think that he carries around a certain guilt for what's happened. And that is really, really intricate to how he kind of acts. Now, his backstory reveal was that at some point in his past, he was with the woman that he loved, and they were running away or trying to escape from like hordes of the undead. So they were in like a keep or a big castle or a big building, and they end up going behind a room and locking the room, and then realizing there's no escape. And the undead starts beating down the door, and it breaks down the door. And as they get rushed with the undead, and they cannot win this fight because you can't. The character that the hangman is falls, and he's starting to get ripped apart in a very gruesome and horrific manner. But as this is happening, he's looking over to the love of his life, and I thought that desperation makes you do crazy things. And what if you had the power to heal yourself, and you kept just trying to survive, even though, like, realistically you couldn't? But as an instinct, she just kept doing this and kept trying to survive and kept trying to think that she can just heal through it and somehow she'll make it, making her own suffering worse. And so the hangman's just watching this as his like consciousness starts to slip away. And as she sees this, she has this one moment to kind of release all of her energy in order to try and protect him, again out of desperation. But ultimately what happens is he just doesn't die. He doesn't pass on. So he ends up just perpetually living because of this spell. And she's gone. Like, that's it. So that tremendous amount of like knowledge that the person you love so much is gone. And now you can never, like, you can't have that back. Like, you know well enough that so much time has passed that it's over. Like the only thing you have left is this cloth that was part of her apron, and you don't even know how you got it or how you managed to hold on to it while you don't remember anything that's happened in between. And that moment is where I got the basis and the understanding for who the hangman was. So the hangman is someone who's always going to have a soft spot for lovers and people in love. It's always going to be something that's going to mean so much to him, and he's always going to be grateful to see it happen and want it to happen. But on the other hand, it's not going to happen for him. It's gone. It's over. Having that love was, even though he only has a few memories of it, meant so much to him that having that cloth and just still being able to be close to that person means something. So that's the foundation of who the hangman is. I just want to pause the video for a second and give a big shout out to our Patreon supporters. We love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. What you do for us is amazing. If you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter and helping the channel move forward and grow, the link is in the description, as well as the link to Critical Failures, where we're part of a live stream game, and this is the game that the hangman is in. If you like it so far, if you haven't seen it, give us a try. Let us know if you like it. We stream Wednesday nights. And also, the link to our World of Warcraft streaming channel is also in the description. Check us out on Twitch and YouTube. With that out of the way, let's jump back into the video. Now, there's other facets to his personality, but that's where he really comes from as a person. He just wants to know who he is or how this happened. And that's really key to him, because maybe he doesn't want it to happen again. Maybe he just wants to know if there's an end to it, or if he's stuck here forever, or just how many people can cast that spell. And if they can cast that spell, could they have survived what happened? Maybe it's possible. The reality of it being, if I was controlling the campaign, I mean, what do? You can't fabricate someone out of nowhere to make this happen. But it's important that he carries that with him and some of the other aspects of his personality. That he's got, he's dead. There's a certain coldness that comes with being dead, but showing reverence for the strongest emotion one person can feel for another, and so respecting that non-death gave them a more like a pretty monster kind of a feel. And then I started to think about, well, what does he look like? And that took a little while to kind of figure out, because obviously he had to conceal who he was and his like undeath as much as possible. So I figured, what a great way to close off most of the face by wearing a big hat. You can wear it, it comes down to here with a big brim. If it's dark enough, you won't be able to really see enough of their face. So that, and like a mask from here, you don't really see much. I thought that would be great. So I came up with the idea of having like a pilgrim style hat, like with the buckle on the front and everything, and having that big steam pipe look, and bringing it kind of to that neo-colonialism look. So he's got that long coat, and kind of bringing that feel kind of brought it to a more like closely to what he looks like now. I still haven't selected a class at this point. I didn't know what he would be. I just knew that he had to look like someone you wouldn't want to talk to or interact with. But he has to survive somehow. So that kind of darkened look really, really stood out to me, and I kind of worked around that idea up until I nailed down into this look of a very, very slender guy, leather coat, a whole bunch of buckles everywhere. And the reason why he has so many buckles and straps and everything is because he can't, like, certain things stop being relative. You know what I mean? Cold really doesn't matter. You don't need to eat. You don't need to drink. But your clothes gets tattered and torn. Now, showing up to a place with a hole and then seeing like a scar underneath that just won't heal, or an open wound that won't heal, not actually opportune. So strap it around with some belts to cover those experiences. So like belt will cover up a lot of those wounds, and or tatters and rips to the clothing. So that's why there's so many buckles and belts all over him, because it helps to conceal what he looks like, what damage his clothes have suffered, because again, he's not taking care of it, because it's not as important. It's more so that he looks just enough human to get by, that nobody questions it. So if he looks a little dirty and dingy and filthy, it's whatever. It's par for the course. Like, let him be gross. Like, it's all right, but he looks human. He looks fine. Let's just think he's just a gross person and not exactly an undead person. So, which is how I came up to how his home would be. He would live in a destitute part of town where there's like nobody there. He basically lives in an abandoned home with like holes in the ceiling that's like, it's going to cost too much to fix to make it livable, and nobody cares enough about the neighborhood to demolish it and bring up something new. So he lives in this basically abandoned place where the food that's there was there when he walked in. It was rotted, it's dry rotted, there's like holes everywhere. The bed hasn't been slept in because he doesn't sleep. He goes there to keep the facade that he's alive, so that way other people don't question him. People can find him. People know he has a home. And the only reason why you had a home is so that way you can live there. And perpetuating that is something that he feels is necessary. So in order to do that, you have to do something to survive. And this is how I started coming to the idea of being a rogue. It was because he had to survive, and he had to do it in a way where he was the least visibly possible. So straight up magic was out. Because if you do magic, if you use magic, it's something you use regularly. Don't get me wrong, like, wizards aren't prestidigitating every step they take and being fancy, but it's an extension of yourself. Even cantrips, especially ones like mage hand, where you just reach out and you grab something from the side and you pull it over. Like, you're going to be using something like that consistently, and it's very easy for people to notice that because it stands out. So magic was out of the question. Being a soldier, out of the question, because you had to be part of a team, you had to be in a regiment, you probably lived together. No, not going to work. Being a barbarian, I'm undead. I don't feel that surge of passion and emotion in order to fuel being a barbarian. Bard, out of the question. You're too noticeable. You're too attractive. It's a part of the kit to be someone who can use some sort of performance, whatever it is. Whispers are performing when they're impersonating someone else. Glamour, even spirits, like, all of those require people to focus on you to succeed. Even whispers was a close concept, but it's too charismatic. It's too much like, I have to take such a huge risk. But I really love whispers, so I've really thought about it, and that's kind of what led me to being a rogue, because there's the shadowy, there's the deception behind it, and there's this need to not necessarily be seen. I mean, you can make a deal with the rogue while the rogue's hiding behind a curtain and you never see his face. Getting into that kind of a circumstance would be very, very easy, because obviously it takes time and practice to get those kinds of skills and abilities. But being able to stay out of danger and out of sight really, really, really would have worked out towards the hangman's benefit. So that's how I started dancing around the rogue. And what ended up really clinching it for me for the rogue was the availability to have proficiencies, and a lot of them. Because the hangman doesn't know, but why he's good at these things is part of who he is. It's muscle memory, it's things that he's practiced, it's things that he's done, it's things that he's been involved with and excited about, the passions that drove him to do certain things and acquire certain skills. But not knowing them and having so many of them meant that he had to be really resourceful in life. And considering he was trying to escape the undead and holding down doors and building up barricades and trying to make quick decisions, though they ultimately ended up being wrong decisions, it really ended up being something that he just didn't give up. He kept trying. And I thought that made a lot of sense with the rogue. So that's how I kind of landed on the rogue as the idea for the subclass, for the class. Now, there are some things that I have not mentioned in the stream yet, and obviously I don't want to do that and ruin it just in case some of you are watching the streamed game. But I do want to say, when I make a character, it's not only just that story that drives me to build everything else from that. It's also when a character looks a certain way or has certain things or appreciates certain items and objects, it's indicative of that person. So the reason why the hangman uses certain weapons, the reason why he's dressed a certain way, it's all tied to very important parts of what he can remember and what his life is. So I always tend, if I make a character, I hate the idea of any weapon is good. You know what I mean? I hate that I use a sword and then I pick up this really great two-handed axe, and it's no, I wield a sword for a reason. So whenever I play games, I try to stick to those, those kinds of weapons or whatever it is, because it feels that's an extension of my character. The short sword and the dagger are extensions of the hangman. The short bow he wields is an extension of the hangman. Could he use other things? Absolutely. Could he use a hand crossbow? Absolutely. Could he use a rapier? Yeah, absolutely. But will he? And the answer is no. And the reason why is because of the same reason why they have names, why they're named weapons as opposed to just using a short sword. Because I think that stuff matters. I think it really separates one character from the next, even if you play the same class over and over again. What I will say is that when the subclass gets revealed and when some of the other memories get revealed, it will start to kind of shed a little bit more to the layers of the hangman, which is kind of my point. I don't want to just be, here's everything, because I don't think real people are like that. And I like the idea that my characters grow and change, and the way they show that is by showing vulnerability with the other players and telling them these things that are so precious to them that they keep it hidden. Because it's cool to be the edgy, cool character that's just awesome looking. But when you're too cool to talk to someone, it hurts the knowledge of who your character is. Because it's less easier for someone else to want to talk to you. It's less easier for you to tell your story because something has to trigger your answer to who are you. And keeping that open really is what gives you that opportunity to have those moments. So again, it was a very cool moment for me. I happen to really enjoy that that reveal of a character from one character to another. I think it creates a certain personal level, and it changes the perspective of each other throughout the game, because now you were one way and now you saw this great thing, and now how do you see that character? That's a great way that changes the dynamic of who your friends are in the party, in the actual game, not out of context, obviously. So I hope you guys liked understanding my process for creating a character and going from there. Obviously, we're level 4, so we haven't really done anything. No, we're level 3. We haven't really done anything dynamic as far as builds are concerned. So real quick, my highest attribute is dexterity. We rolled for stats. I rolled pretty well. And once you see the subclass come out, I might do a little bit of an explanation as to how that works, what it is, and what my kind of goal is with that. But it is pretty straightforward, as I am a rogue. There isn't a lot of surprising creative like manipulation here. Like, I'm not doing multi-classing or anything like that. It's pretty straight rogue, with dexterity being the most important. And then I'm thinking about boosting up constitution, because I think obviously being more survivable is a core feature of being undead. But we'll see how that plays out. That being said, a big thank you to our Patreon supporters. Again, we love you guys. Thank you so much. Big thank you to Critical Failures. Without you, we couldn't do this video because we wouldn't have the Hangman. And a big thank you to all of you guys for liking, sharing, and subscribing and commenting on our videos. It helps the channel grow. It really means a lot to us. And thank you for giving a spooky kid a chance.